Greetings to all. My name is Dave Durocher. I'm the editor of the IEC Industry Newsletter, and I've been a member of the IEC for a number of years. And also joining me as my co-host in this interview is Adam DeVoe. Adam's also a member of the IEC, and he leads our efforts around the World Technology Summits. So I'd like to introduce our guest today. It's Mr. Darryl Palmer. Darryl is Control Systems Team Lead at Caterpillar at the Center for Engineering in Peoria, Illinois. And Darryl is also a volunteer leader in IEEE Region 4 in the Central Illinois section. So welcome, Darryl. Today we're going to kind of spotlight your story and try to learn a little bit more about how IEEE and Caterpillar fit together and your role as an engineering leader in industry. So my first question, Darryl, to start off, Adam mentioned to me that you have described yourself as a reformed astrophysicist. Now, how did a reformed astrophysicist end up at Caterpillar, and what led you to bring IEEE into your own career journey?
Well, I started with astrophysics and I was pursuing that. I actually interned at NASA and worked there for a while. And, it was very fun. Worked on a lot of different types of technology, met a lot of fascinating people. But I was also interested in engineering. I guess the first time I met an engineer in real life was a civil engineer in the ninth grade. And in science, it's more like you have to be exact. Engineering, you have to make it work, right? And you have to make it safe. So it's radically different things between the two. And so what got me into engineering actually was IEEE. From astrophysics, I did a lot of simulation work. I switched to computer science when I realized you don't get a job in astrophysics. And so I was in the School of Business, and my sister was electrical engineering. And I would go there sometimes, and I would see all these students do these wonderful projects and things there. And I remember my first time I'm there, and I see this LED, and I'm like, well, how do you make this work? And they're like, oh, just grab that voltage source and hook it up to 5 volts. So I grabbed the voltage source, I hooked it up to 5 volts. It was bright, it was wonderful. And then, I turned it off, turned it back on, and it didn't light up again. And I was like, what happened? It doesn't work anymore. And they were like, what about the resistor? Which resistor did you pick? And I was like, you didn't say anything about a resistor. You just said 5 volt source. And so they said, well, what resistor do I need? And they were like, 1 kiloohm. And I walk over there to the cabinet of resistors, and we don't have one. We have a 330 ohm, and then we have a 3 kiloohm. And they're like, well, just grab the 330. No, I grabbed the 3 kiloohm, someone else says. And I'm like, you said one. It has to be one. There is no 1 kiloohm. I don't know what you're talking about. And so it's hard in the beginning to grasp that, with engineering, you might have something that's not an optimal solution, but it's still a viable solution, right? And you have more places to use your creativity to do something. And so I got involved in autonomy. Actually, this is in like the 1990s of creating autonomous vehicles for the students contest. And I like big things, moving big things. I did stuff for GM and other stuff like that. And so when I got the call from Caterpillar, I was interested, one, because they have big machines. Two is because quality and safety is big for them, right? As an engineer, you probably realize it, not many other people do, that, when you sit in a chair or turn on a light or get in an airplane, there's this circle of trust you have for other engineers that you never know, that you'll never meet, that makes things safe for you and your families. And so it's just that ownership of what you do really was different with engineering, and was different that Caterpillar made that, front focus all the time in every meeting for why I chose Caterpillar.
Okay, great stuff. Adam, did you have a question?
Well, so I think you actually went into a lot of what sort of turned you on in your career. Uh, I think it would be useful if you could just say a couple of words of what IEEE brought to you early in your career, and what it's bringing to your career at this stage, sort of as you've grown within your profession and the responsibilities that you have.
Okay. So early in my career, with IEEE, I was involved with Engineers Week. I loved Engineers Week, working on student projects. I did not deal with high school students in a lot. Most of it was like me networking, me coming up to speed, absorbing lots of information that IEEE provided. That transitioned as it became more of a young middle level engineer, that I saw the need of going out to schools for Engineers Week. I did it in, I think, 2002 was the 70, was it the 125th anniversary? It was something like that. So talking to kids about engineering, because when I grew up, um, engineer was Scotty on Star Trek. That's what engineering was. And or for younger people, maybe it's LaForge or someone else. But you really never, met a lot of people who were engineers really when I grew up. And so a lot of kids, they have the electronics, they have the devices, but they interact with them as users. So going in and explaining how it works and that you can create it, right? You can create this or you can create something better. And that capability, that spark in their eyes, you see that when they comprehend and understand that.
Okay. So can you give some examples of what you're involved in? I would say that's satisfying to you and really turns you on right now in terms of some of the things that IEEE is involved in.
Oh, well, it's a lot of different things. One of the things is, I think when I was younger, people said that, you have to figure out what you want in life. And I never really figured out what I wanted to do. And I still don't know what I want to do. But I want to learn everything. I want to see what other people are doing. And so with IEEE, I originally went into educational activities. My mom was a teacher. My aunt was in charge of, she was on the school board for Cleveland for like 20 years. And so we have a lot of people doing education and teaching kids, breadboarding, other activities. It gives you that energy to do that. But I wanted to do other things too. I wanted to network. I wanted to learn more about best practices, what's happening in other areas. And so I got involved first with Computer Society, which was awesome because that's my major is computer science. But then, I didn't just want things that were paper or theoretical. I still like machines. And so that's why I chose Industrial Electronics Society to become involved in there. And because of my experience with industry, I really liked, not just reading the paper, but how do you make something that actually affects people's lives, right? That actually makes the world a better place. That is the key thing I want. I just want something in paper. I want to see it in action. And so I joined the Industrial Electronics Society. I was on the Industry Activities Committee so that I can see, from the ideation phase or young phase to actually, this could be something that can be global, and impact things. And so that is pretty much where I am now. Getting involved a lot in politics too, as far as the representative for Region 4. And that's because when I had my healthcare startup, it's nice, talking to politicians. Some people don't like it, but, politicians decide if your schools get money, if your roads get built, what taxes you have. Laws and politics affects most of your life. And the reality is most people don't even know who their state senator is or state representative is, but they have such huge power over you and your family. And a lot of times they just don't know what the impact is of a decision. And so that's why it's nice talking to them so you can explain that.
Okay. So in all of this, it might be worthwhile to say a little bit about your progression within Caterpillar. Uh, what you're responsible for.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. And then I have a follow-up question to that. Okay.
Yes. So I started Caterpillar actually only in 2023. And so what I'm responsible for, software, I still like software requirements for the engine ECM. So all of the electronics that go inside the engine. So when you think of a Caterpillar machine, there's an engine, there's a transmission, there's stuff for application, more machine functionality, but that engine is the core thing, right? Before it was very mechanical. Now it has injectors, it has a fuel system, it has, after treatment. So you have to measure the performance of the engines. It has different fault codes it can generate. So there's a bunch of networks actually in the engine itself between all the electronics that communicate there. And so it's really nice to, work on diesel, work on gas, work on alternate fuel engines and the technology that's there. And also keep the mind of, it has to be safe, it has to work. It doesn't matter if it's, an area below sea level, it doesn't matter if it's high altitude, it doesn't matter if it's below zero, it doesn't matter if it's in the desert. And just that complexity is I find interesting.
Okay. So I think in describing all of this, you mentioned that you had a startup in healthcare. So
Yes.
it seems very, very different from, working the kind of hardware that you see at Caterpillar. But it also shows that you have some entrepreneurial spirit about what you do. You want to just say a couple of words about that?
Yeah, so a lot of right now I'm interested in helping with IEEE entrepreneurship. I'm involved with that. And the reason why, my mom unfortunately passed away when I was at my previous employer. And it was something that was preventable. It was healthcare. And, at the time, they were talking about healthcare costs and readmission rates. And I was good with simulations. And I started to look at, well, what if we use simulation modeling in healthcare to improve outcomes? And I had no prior experience in healthcare, but I knew data and simulation work. And so I got involved in it as a co-founder. We got a pilot at Cleveland Clinic, which is amazingly awesome. And I just by my sheer, intrinsic want to do this. It wasn't about money, it wasn't about ego, but I needed to learn everything. I need to focus on this. And it was amazing to have that feeling that my solution was something that billion-dollar organizations didn't have, that they needed. And so I remember one time where I met this case manager and we're explaining the product and stuff like that. And she started to cry because she had this pain. Nursing is different from medicine. Nursing is about the patient and the family. And things came together where the nurses were forced to not help people because of patient choice. And our solution helped with that. And no one else, even the other people at the hospital, they didn't realize what they were asking of her, right? But that really motivated me to know that, I could go in and fix someone's pain that they thought it was unfixable, right? That they thought they would have to accept. And one of the reasons I'm getting involved in IEEE entrepreneurship is, maybe doctors get it or lawyers get it or other people get it, but it's very rare that an engineer gets that feeling that this day, this is why I picked engineering. This was worth all the time, all the effort, all the debt, because I did this. And when you actually have that feeling, it's something magical, almost transcendent. And I like everyone to realize that they can do it too. It's not, you can change the world and make money. It's not one or the other.
Okay.
Darryl, that's good stuff. Thanks very much.
Okay.
One of the things we try to accomplish in the Industry Engagement Committee is to try to reach out to engineers in industry, some of them with the IEEE, a lot of them not with the IEEE. And one of the things that we often get as a question is if you look at the large industries, for instance, you work for a multinational corporation, Caterpillar. So when you think about Caterpillar, what can you kind of share with us what you feel the value is to Caterpillar in terms of in your employer and being involved in the IEEE and you being a volunteer leader?
Well, I mean, the problem is, before, I guess, when I was going to school, probably half of what you learned would be obsolete in 10 or 15 years. Now, half of what you learn in the university would be obsolete probably in 4 years or less. And so with Caterpillar, it's very mechanical engineering, very hard iron company. But now we have more software. Now you have more digital functionality, more networks that happen in a machine, and that is usually the value, more value than the steel and the metal that's in there. And so this transition, um, cross-skilling, upskilling people individually makes a difference. Caterpillar, of course, wants to do it for their employees, but if you want to, survive in this market that's changing, in this world that's changing, you have to take ownership of your own career. And I see that as being, something that IEEE provides a value, something that you see a lot of engineers want or need, you know. And this is where the relationship is mutually beneficial, I think, between the
Okay.
company and employees.
So from the things that you've gone through and your outlook and enthusiasm, um, if you were speaking to a group of students, what would you sort of say were the most important things for them to pick up in their careers? What advice would you give them?
The advice I would give them would be to realize, I mean, engineering is nice as a degree because you can be picky and choosy of who you work with and the products you work on. So the first thing is to explore what really drives and motivates you, right? Because one thing, you're talking about the pay. The pay is really a short-term motivator, right? It's like, what do you love working on? What impact do you want to have? And think of that, and then think of what companies align with it, right? One of the reasons I chose Caterpillar, I like big machines. I'm not saying I don't, but one reason I like Caterpillar is because when you look at around the world, right, and you look at other countries, um, they need roads, they need schools, they need hospitals, right? And Caterpillar makes the machines and mines the material to make that happen, right? So it's not like I'm in love with the machine. I'm in love with the machine does to the world and to the people.
Okay.
Hey, that's good stuff, Darryl. Thanks very much. Very inspirational, and it's nice to get a look inside the, under the hood with you personally and professionally. So, hey, I guess we'll close this out. I would encourage engineers across your industry and all other industries to follow Darryl's lead and leverage the technical leadership of the IEEE. Get involved, get your company involved, stay abreast of the latest innovations and technologies. And if you'd like to hear more stories like Darryl's, subscribe to the IEEE Industry newsletter and explore how IEEE can support your journey in industry. Thanks again, Darryl.
Thank you.